Good morning. Saturday, November 30th, 2019, 8:20 in the morning here in Sarasota, Florida. This will be the first attempt of just being sort of as direct as possible with stating sort of the most general description of what my life is at this moment, on this date. Let's see. I am presently struggling with regards to my relationship with a job that pays a good chunk of my bills with Ironman. I love the people with whom I work. I have not experienced as amazing, I've not experienced in my life since sports, really since high school, because my college team, I just was wholly not ready to be part. Division I for me, given that I had zero expectation of having a Division I athletic experience, I was just bowled over by a great deal of that, and I relinquished that scholarship early into my sophomore year. So I referenced sort of my greatest memories and my greatest teams were really my high school teams, most notably my high school basketball team. And I am wired as a team player more than an individual. I love being part of a team. I love being part of a unit. And I've really struggled in my adulthood because of a whole number of reasons. I'm not married. I don't have children. And that's, I could do a whole podcast just on the reality of what that is. As, a woman that made a conscious choice to not have a family, but who still has all the nurturing desire and wants, that sort of closeness with a unit. And my immediate family and my extended family as an adult, we're not really close either. And I live in a state that's far away from family, and so I don't have the blood family relationships. So for me, my family has always kind of been where I've worked. And from the time I had my very first job, where I was, beyond babysitting and a paper route, I gave my all. To use a sports term, I left it all on the court all the time, sort of day in and day out with any job I've ever had. And there wasn't anything I wouldn't give. That was what I was sort of most loyal to. And that's kind of how I was raised, that Midwestern attitude of working hard and taking pride in your work and, almost going above and beyond naturally. I would do whatever was expected of me and then some, which is why people in general have always, wanted me on their team, because I was always able to serve something for them. And I never really knew I had a right to have my own side of that equation. This is such a tough thing to talk about because there are so many interweaving pieces on the high level. And we've got, at one point here, we've got the overriding fact that I launched into my own company, manifesting my own dream 7 years ago. And that is to be a part of co-creating a very, very, very different version of Earth, a very different version of human beings interacting with one another. One that is not hierarchy-based, one that is not money-based, one that is not material-based, but experience-based. One that's not fear-based, but love-based. I finally just went after my own dream 7 years ago. And when I did that, and it was wholly founded, wholly initiated on a very real, personal, spiritual awakening. the foundation of everything I want to be and do for the rest of this existence is based on spirit, without a doubt. Based on spirit, based on wanting to, based on any message that any of the major teachers of all the big religions, based on what Jesus talked about, based on what Muhammad talked about, based on Moses, based on Buddha. You know, I want to be living in a different version of Earth. And I believe that version is already in existence, and that part of the shift in consciousness, part of the spirituality aspect of things, is that we as the human being, we have to sort of evolve consciously. We have to evolve from the world of fear into this world of love. And the availability of that is on our planet right now. But in terms of numbers of people, you know, I don't even know what our global population is up to, 7 billion plus, something like that. I don't think it's in the 8 billion yet. But still, relatively few, in the terms of numbers of overall population, have sort of remembered this. So this is still a relatively small number of people for whom this hippy-dippy, airy-fairy, new age stuff resonates with. Ultimately, I think that is the sort of crowd, if you will, that I'm making my way towards. That's where I'm going to find my tribe. However, I really struggle with that because a big theme of how I've been trying to live my life is rising above all us versus them categories. I really try to refrain and don't enjoy segmenting. I want to be unifying. I want to be out there, and I can close my eyes and just see, oh my gosh, if we all just gave everybody the benefit of the doubt, if we all just were able to not take things personally, just be real about what we're doing and saying and a part of in the three-dimension world, with this belief that we can do it differently, and then a part of doing it differently is truly seeing one another as equals. And that's a really hard thing to do when we've been existing in a world of hierarchy for centuries now. So it's a challenge, this shift. To make matters more interesting, I was wholly naive 7 years ago when I took this leap. And boy, it was an Alyson-style leap. It was big. It was big. I had myself in a deep financial hole, and I had never been in that situation. I had never had financial debt. And I didn't have just a small amount. I went big. So this naive dream at that point of never having to work for anybody else again, but that I was on this fast track to solidifying what it is I'm here to do and able to do and want to be doing. Therefore, I'll be attracting people that I can work with and not work for. Well, suffice to say, none of that happened as quickly as I had hoped. In fact, much, much slower. And as a result, though, it's unreal, because really what that has meant is that these past 7 years, Spirit, I surrendered my life to, it was innocent, it was naive, it was not yet wise, it was like my heart wide open. I learned a ton. I've learned a ton of very hard lessons. But the truth of the matter is, Spirit was in the driver's seat. The decision I made to put myself in that mountain of debt, what I was trying to do, and how that debt came about, that's a whole nother story. But for right now, the important note is, in addressing the consequences of that leap of faith, very real leap of faith, it's like Spirit has been looking out for me, and all sorts of miracles have happened. All sorts of miracles. and things that I never would have imagined would represent my reality today. I had written off home ownership, I had written it off. And here I stand in a home that I now own on my own. I didn't have pets for a reason, because I knew I was still wildly, had my hands full with managing myself, as I still really tried to come into myself. And now I have these two animals that have absolutely altered my life, the experience, and I've had them now for almost 4 years. I had a relationship that, well, of course, I've dreamed of a life partner since I can remember. Now, again, that's a whole nother story. And it was a very hard relationship and not an easy 5 years, but I still maintain that he was my soulmate. I mean, we have tons of soulmates. I really do maintain that he and I intended to be partners in this life, but both people have to remember that. Suffice to say, I had never had a relationship like that. And I really wasn't seeking that at all either. I knew I desired it sometime down the road, but I wasn't looking for that to happen when it happened. Certainly wasn't looking for it to play out the way it played out. So Spirit's been in the driver's seat here, and I've had to make very challenging choices. A lot of times over the course of the past 7 years, more so in the beginning, as I faced my $96,480 of debt. It was almost like I had crappy choice A, crappy choice B, crappy choice C, or sometimes just crappy choice A, crappy choice B. And I had to make a choice. I've had to make really, really hard choices for these past 7 years and it's developed one of the most important skills in a conscious, when you're on a conscious spiritual journey, which is discernment. You have to have discernment. And discernment, again, this could be its own podcast. I'm just going to leave it at that making these choices has allowed me to really hone a skill that I didn't have. I want to say I barely had any discernment whatsoever. Okay, so we've got a spiritual dream that I launched into 7 years ago. Very naive. Leapt very big. Clearly nothing went, quote unquote, right. Nothing went as I dreamed or hoped or planned, but a remarkable amount of growth has taken place in that 7 years. A tremendous amount of wisdom has been gained to balance this extremely big open heart that I have. And another big piece here is I'm coming from a lifetime of truly not having a voice. And because that was established so young in my home, I took it into my adulthood. And I didn't have an understanding until these past few years. And I'm still growing to understand how my inability, first I just didn't even know I had the right to have wants. I didn't know, I had no idea what I really, it was only 10 years ago that I finally gave myself permission to go after what I wanted and desired, rather than be made to feel like I had to make these other choices based on what society or people I cared about in my life were telling me directly or indirectly that I should be doing. So it's a really interesting thing. I never had a voice. I didn't know how to stand up for what I wanted. Certainly, I've been a people pleaser all my life, and the one that everybody says is super nice, and I am a super, super kind person. But it's funny because when you start to express opinions, especially strong opinions, which I possess, it's interesting because now all of a sudden, you're not as liked. And now all of a sudden you're potentially saying things that trigger people, even though that's not your intention. And it's just funny because I've just always kind of been I was very much a victim of my own life. And I didn't realize I was perpetuating my own sad story. I didn't realize that my beliefs, my deep belief of poverty consciousness was hindering my ability to thrive and to attract thriving opportunities. I've just been in this, I had been in this survival mode. Again, a lot of it was based on the foundational patterns of my childhood. And to drop another big level sort of general description of who I am and what am I really doing here, I believe our souls choose these lives. The soul chose to merge, if you will, with the body and the vessel and the personality of Alyson. My soul chose my parents and they chose me. So it's never been, ever have I been trying to blame my parents for these deep foundational patterns that were set. I had been struggling to understand it. And finally in 2010, I waved the white flag and I went home to Michigan for the first time. At that point, I was 34 and I hadn't lived at home since I was 18. And I addressed my life. I waved the white flag and I surrendered, and lo and behold, all I was trying to do was just find my way back to happy as I prepared to move to Seattle, a choice I was making for me. And instead, I had nothing short of a spiritual awakening. And everything changed. My point of no return date that I say, where it was just like, oh my God, I can't go back, was November 18th, 2010. Just over 9 years ago. I go to Seattle. I have an unbelievable experience at Microsoft. I had to go away for 3 months before I could start another year contract with them. I chose to come back to Florida. And it became abundantly clear immediately that if I was going to go after my entrepreneurial dreams, it was going to be then or never, because that does not get easier the older that you get. At that point, I was, this was just the next year. So I was 35, almost 36 years old. It was 2012. I moved out to Seattle in 2011. I came back to Florida in August of 2012. And everything shifted. And I knew, okay, it's go time. Let's go after our dream. I've always been entrepreneurial. I've never done this before. Let's leap in. And it was entirely, everything was guided by this vision of a different world, this vision of a different earth, and my skill set to bridge into that. First, I had to bridge my own life into that. And now we kind of come back as I had to face. So I did that for 1 year. A huge amount of the debt was incurred, half of it, because I essentially paid myself to not have a job working for somebody else. I used what at the time was my exceptional credit. And a huge part of the start of the company was pay it forward gifts to 4 different couples and or individuals. I had a plan. It was very loose, and I knew how crazy it looked on the surface. I was wholly aware of that. But I also knew that it looked crazy from a certain vibration perspective. And I was coming at it from a completely different perspective. From my perspective, the higher spirit within me, my soul, it was not crazy that I had to start my company with something that was that big, demonstrating I'm seriously talking a different game here. I'm seriously working to be through and through this spiritual awakening, this new, everything that was triggered in me, in my memory complex, when I was home in Michigan and read the better part of 40 spiritual books in a 7-week period in the late fall of 2010. So now I've got this mountain of debt, but I also had a running start of a body of work. My YouTube channel tracks all of this. Now, granted, it's not put together, assembled in a way that likely makes a ton of sense, but it was never intended to be doing that at that time. Music was coming out of me, singing, dancing, writing. I've got the better part of at least 3 books written. I went through, I was doing it. Now, I know a lot of people had a ton of criticism, especially those closest to me. And at that time, I was not solid enough in standing up for myself. Again, I knew I didn't have anything to sort of show. And in this world, seeing is believing. The world that I was all of a sudden awoken to was this believing. You have to believe it first, and then you will see it and experience it. That's 180 degrees different. That's hard to be taken seriously and to not appear absolutely as a crazy lunatic with what I was doing at the magnitude that I was trying to do it at, with something that was that opposite, energetically, if you will. But here I am, on the other side in no small way. Now, hey, the journey has not necessarily been envious. Trust me. This has been by far, this journey has been harder than anything of sort of my life before my spiritual awakening. That all these seemingly, pretty big accomplishments, not so big with today's youth, because today's youth is just outstanding. The talent and the gifts of what these young people in this generation being born is blows my mind away. But, having a few degrees, a couple undergrads, master's degree, doing the half Ironmans, and, having this, I was a great student, I was a great athlete. I've achieved a decent, like I said, now I'm at an age where I haven't achieved shit in that dimension, because now I never was able to play the game very well after college. I would say up until college, I had a very, very quote unquote impressive whatever. It's not much of a resume at that point. I'm 22 years old, but I had impressive things that I had done at that point. But I've never been able to play the game that's based on money, the game that's based on material things, the game that's based on rising up the ladder. And I just can't do it. I'm just not wired to be able to handle that without totally going against my entire essence. So I struggled. Then I had the awakening, and now, like I said, that is the journey I've been on, right? Is the spiritual awakening to manifest, is my own spiritual journey, and to manifest and to be part, whole and whole, of creating this new version of Earth, for lack of a better way of saying it. Well, the issue, that sort of got put on delay, if you will, because I had to face this mountain of debt. And, I knew I had a ton of growth still to do. The growing never ends. The expanding never ends. The lessons never end. And that played into directly why I invested and who I invested. I knew I wasn't ready yet to really invest in myself, because I was just so new to giving myself permission to go after this, to no longer accept everybody saying, you're too idealistic, you're too positive, the world doesn't work like that, you can't do that in the business world, you can't see. I finally just I had accepted that. I never really believed it, But I had accepted it because I couldn't see any way through it. I just couldn't navigate my way through it. Then I have the awakening. Now I'm like, okay, you all can still say that, but no way. I've seen it now. Now I've seen it. I know that this is the greater truth, at least for me, and I'm going after it. And at that time, I have the ability to speak and write right now. Speaking and writing is something that I've always excelled in. Now, I haven't really had the opportunity to do so quote unquote professionally, but again, all the way through college, I was a leader. I was the captain of everything or president of everything and spoke all the time. And I haven't had that opportunity as an adult. But I knew that at least at a minimum, I could do that. And I felt like I already had a story to share. All the way back in 2012, just less than 2 years after this awakening. And that is what I thought I would be doing. I thought I was going to be on a stage. I thought I had sort of assembled this dream team in my choice of folks to whom I paid it forward. And none of the people I invested in and gave money to, none of them went looking for this. I don't fault them at all for the fact that not a single thing from my perspective for me played out. It's not any of their faults. I'm shouldering all of that. But again, those dreams and that belief that I had that ability to speak and share stories of that journey at that point, that just all got put on hold because now I had to face an insane situation. And there are so many pieces of that story on how I did address it, but at the root, I most certainly had to go back out and work for others. So then I was back, sort of thrown almost back into this world that I thought I was done with, where I didn't know how to have a voice for myself in that world. I had always been sort of reactionary in that world, with the working for others world. Like I said, almost everybody I've ever worked for, I would say everybody I've ever worked for, until I tried to start speaking up for myself, everybody has loved me and wanted me working for them. But then what I've experienced is as soon as I would try to speak up for myself in work relationships and personal relationships, the past 10 years, here I am in my upper 30s doing this for the first time. That's pretty tough. And it's like I said, I'm not perfect with it. I'm stumbling. But I'm not trying to upset anybody. I really am simply trying to take care of myself in all these ways, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in all these ways. And that is not easy. It's not easy in my experience for most women. And like I said, I was this people pleaser. I've got this, I had this ingrained and I chose it. My soul chose it because I knew that when I finally broke through that self-loathing and that inability to allow my greater essence, which is spirit, to come through me unapologetically and to follow that, I knew it would be so dramatically different that therein laid part of the story. Part of the story is that. But I'm not there yet. And here I am at the precipice, and I'm doing my best to not be vague. I'm trying to be as specific as possible in this recording, but I'm also very much trying to weave together even just a fraction of the pieces. I'm trying to highlight the bigger pieces. So here I am. And at this time, 4.5 years ago, to this date, in this 10-year segment, if you will, and let's call it, I really wasn't facing the debt. I launched into my company. Well, today actually is the 7-year anniversary. It was November 30th, 2012. And I gave the money away. My pay it forward investments were made in the early part of 2013, and my business became legal in the state of Florida in 2013. And I gave myself and gifted myself the vast majority of that year to my world of work where I buried myself every day. It was amazing. I woke up every day. I was working a ton, writing ideas, and I still have the roots of a lot of those ideas. But that's what 2013 was. I gave myself all of it was funded with 0% credit. And it wasn't, and I told myself, I am going to fully believe that I'm going to be on a stage speaking and thus having an opportunity to earn money to pay back this debt by the end of the year, by the time the 0% credit cards are due. Clearly, that did not happen. So when the end of the year came and I was facing holy shit moment, big holy shit moment, that's when I started back at the farm. I started picking up more and more local races. And then in 2014, I picked up a couple Ironman races. And then in 2015, I was offered the position that it's not the same, it's morphed now, but I was offered this contracting position with Ironman that I'm still in. And see, at my underlying understanding of things, I'd never, not even long before my spiritual awakening, since I can remember, I've never believed in accidents or coincidences. I didn't really have the word synchronicity, but that is what synchronicities are everywhere, especially at this time, and especially for those who are on a conscious spiritual journey. Oh man, this is interesting. I really want to finish this. I'm going to ignore this. Oh God, it's the vet. Okay, I'm going to let this keep running. Hello? Yes. Hi, Jan. She's a little better. I mean, she ate. I mean, I'm still having to prod her to eat, but she's better, but it's minimal.
I've been in contact with Dr. King about her lab work.
Okay, what's the news?
And, she's got pancreatitis.
Okay.
Okay. And, she's got some, liver issues.
Okay.
So what we need to do is there any way you could possibly bring her in this morning with fluid?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I can do that. Are these both, in your guys' professional opinion, are these treatable? What she's looking at?
Yes, but the thing is, she's gotta be.
Okay. Okay.
And we're also, he's wanting to send home 2 medications. So you got the prednisolone yesterday.
The one for her ear, I sure did.
Okay. Now he wants to send home some stuff that's called Actigol.
Okay.
And he also wants it's a liquid.
Okay.
It's going to help support the liver.
Okay.
And he also wants to send her some pain medication.
Okay. Okay.
You've got to feed her.
Okay, so just syringer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.